Regular, regular.
Regular.
I heard something else. Okay. Congress over the summer when they were really sort of ramping up the discussion. What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of AutoBlack. I am one of your hosts. My name is Robert, and with me I got my friend Xavier.
What's up?
I got Perla.
Hello.
We got Jamar,
What it do?
and we have Whitney.
Hi.
And together we make up AutoBlack. AutoBlack is a discussion-based podcast comprised of 5 Black architects where we get on the we commune on the stoop, and if you will, and we just discuss things that move us, things that we're passionate about, from politics to design to community, and we do it with a unapologetically Black architectural perspective. So if this is your first time with us, welcome. If you've been with us before, you back with us again, welcome back. So today we have an episode that is sort of a us just freestyling, if you will. And the premise of this is that one of us will present a some some piece of content that we've consumed recently, whether it be from a book, whether it be from another podcast or another YouTube video, that has caused us to think deeply, that has caused us to pontificate, that has caused us uh, to think in a way of higher, I don't know, but that's caused us to.
How you gonna use pontificate? Hey, like we're gonna call it the pontificate, and then you go like, that's the only big word I got.
You should have ponder
I
about
shouldn't have to. Yeah, I couldn't figure out where to go from there, but that's caused us to think deeply, and then we pose that as a thought exercise to the group, and then we just take the episode where it goes. So it'll be fun because we don't really know uh, where it's going to go, but I think it'd be a good way for us to sort of bring some of the things that we're thinking about and discuss them as a group. So today, for the very first of these types of recording, I will be bringing something to the table, and so I think it's relevant in us being obviously in the month of February, Black History Month. One of the things that I like to do during Black History Month is, like, I like to try to consume some of the works of civil rights leaders of the old. And this month I've been reading actually Dr. King's last memoir, Where Do We Go From Here, Community or Chaos? And it's really just his sort of reflection on the achievements that were made during the 60s and the efforts of trying to achieve civil rights and voting equality. And then also, in at the same time, there's been a rise of the Black Power movement. There's been a rise of different groups that have grown frustrated or weary with the nonviolent approach. And so he's kind of reflecting on the achievements, but also what's the next step in terms of where do we go from here as a community of Black people. And I think that um, I've also been sort of thinking about that in just the sense of, looking at where we are with, obviously the elimination of affirmative action, the rollback of DEI, looking at the state of the country since the election of Barack Obama, the first Black president, to sort of where we are now. And it's a very openly racially charged division in the country. And so as I was reading this, I kind of had this thought where I think for us as Black people, maybe we should, and kind of go with me here. It's kind of like a wild idea, and I don't know if I'm right. I'm just lofting up ideas, and hopefully we can land a plane somewhere. But what if we take what if we allow race to not necessarily be a part of our public push for change? And the reason why I say that is because I think that the idea and the concept of race is one that is used as a tool of distraction. And at the heart of it, it really is more so about classism than it is about racism. And so as black folks, in terms of where we kind of go from there, what if we make our efforts much more about economic gain? And I think even in the sense of like, how do we create a insulated um, sort of self-sustaining approach to like black economic growth. And I don't know, I don't know sort of what that means or what that looks like. Obviously, as we've discussed on previous episodes, like the idea of creating a separatist black economic agenda is difficult. But if we were to make some advancements in that way, what does that look like? Like, what if we removed the distraction of race and focused on propping up and pushing um, the, the insulation of like the black dollar in terms of community?
So you want us to ignore race, but still envision a world where we're just focused on black dollars?
That and just really economic gain. And so the the thought behind that is that Dr. King had made an interesting point in his memoir where he talked about, and I think especially now where there's a lot of trying to be a lot of rollback behind social or economic assistance for those who are disenfranchised or those who are in poor communities. you know it always, these social programs typically become like a black program, like,
Yeah.
the idea that the majority of people on welfare is black people, which is not the case. And so if you have to, instead of like questioning, and I'm gonna butcher the quote, but instead of questioning like the beggar, you have to then question the systems in which has created the person who is in need to feel that they have to beg. And I think it's the idea that there are far more poor white folks out there that are in economic um disparity than there is of black people. But what allows them to sometimes vote against their interests is because they're still propped up on the idea that I'm still white and therefore I'm better. And so if we eliminate the distraction of race and focus on economic gain, then does that change the ability to progress?
So I think you're asking the wrong people to eliminate the distraction of race. It's probably on the white person side that you have to ask that too. Um,
True. That's true.
um, yeah, it's just I think focusing on economically, like of course the 1% is less of a number than the 99%, and as years move by, it seems like more and more people are being piled into just one bracket: those who have and those who don't have. Um, but it would be nice because more people in one group can overtake the other group, but I think it wouldn't happen because there's always going to be the people who have and the people who don't have. I don't really see a system. I think even like if you do, I don't want to bring up governance systems, but communism or the people who work in the government who make the rules are always going to have more than the people who have to live by the rules. So I just feel like there's always going to be the people who have and people who don't have, no matter even if it's uniform racially society.
Hmm. Human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Pearl.
No. Okay. My initial thought, I want to address your question, Rob, and what X is mentioning here. But to your question, Rob, I think we would be in a completely different space if, metaphorically speaking, we all had blindfolds and not looked at race and really just focused on our economy. My what I'm struggling with what X is saying is if hierarchy is a problem, is if that's an issue or detriment to making progress, where like in any sort of business or in any sort of corporation, any sort of even in family, if you want to look at family in that way, there is a level of hierarchy that each person plays a role that supports, even in our bodies, if we're thinking anatomically, our head does something, our hand does something, our feet does something. So I don't know if there's an issue in terms of different, or in terms of different levels of an economy. It's just what we're doing in those places that really matters. And I think there needs to be a shift in mentality and a shift of morality too, unfortunately, to get to that point where Martin Luther King is talking about.
But morality is different for different people. So it wouldn't matter what the shift is because everyone's going to have a differing opinion on it.
But but we all can agree if there is someone who's homeless and needs a place to stay, we all could agree that, hey, this person needs some help, right?
All of us on this call, yes.
Yeah.
You don't think the 1% thinks that way?
No.
Some people think
If
it's
they
like
did,
their
they
fault.
could literally afford to house everyone in this country. They would do it. They can afford to,
So what? Okay.
but they're not
Yeah, so I
doing
get
it.
I think that's what we need to get into with like morality. Is like everybody has different views of what is morally right and wrong.
Really?
Yeah, it's based off of religion. It's based off of your life experiences, yourself, traumas. It's a deep seated issue.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Well.
We're never going to agree, but that's a part of being human.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
so I think an interesting idea, right? When you talk about racism and you talk about the idea of white supremacy, the one thing about white supremacy is that it could feed your egos, but it can't feed your stomach. It can't keep a roof over your head. It can't make sure that your children are receiving the best education and that you have the best health care and all of this stuff. And so like I historically proven like there have been these attempts to try to foster this type of movement behind economic an economic agenda. So if we look at like the Rainbow Coalition that was led by Fred Hampton, where he got groups of Latino groups who got the equivalent of that day of like the Proud Boys, right? Where it's like, hey, we don't have to like each other, but we're all struggling off of the same type of economic disparity that we're being oppressed by. So let's unite behind that. And obviously, we know what the end result of that was. But I'm thinking in terms of like, how do we adopt that? I think it's a narrative shift. So, with this last election cycle, what kind of frustrated me is that obviously one of the things that was like the issues, my eggs are too expensive. My eggs are too expensive. And I think that there's a very specific narrative that we can push rather than trying to talk about the racial undertones that was behind that. But it's like, well, yeah, your eggs are expensive, and that's a specific cause, and that's a specific reason that then unites us. And so, how do we push towards that?
I think if we had more conversations with people who did not look like us and have differing opinions, but that takes a level of effort that I don't think some of us necessarily need to do at this point, honestly, because we've been doing it enough. um, and you realize at some point you're not going to change how people feel or think about you or think about the topic because it's coming from you and you look the way that you do. So at this point, I think it takes them speaking to them and having those hard conversations, because no matter what we say, they're going to see what we look like and not hear the words that are coming out of our mouths.
And even thinking about economic wise, like lobbyists play a really big role in the messaging. And so even if you have the messaging out there, it really takes, like when you said, breaking down those barriers between the lower class or the working class and the middle class, and that it's just gonna be hard to compete with the dollars that can be pumped into it. Because again, everybody knows that, like, automobiles aren't that great for us, but because we're just so used to it, because it's part of our everyday life, and we know that, like, obviously public transportation would be beneficial, but we're just used to the automobile, and it's been pushed into our brains that we need to have a car to have freedom. We need to have a home to have financial freedom. We need to have so many of these things, um, and it's really pushed by corporations. And so, really, you have to. It's an uphill fight to fight the big corporations that control, which is honestly almost at this point like the oligarchy. Like, I don't know how you navigate that. I don't know how you fight against that at this point.
And it seems like they're all
That's a
related.
really good point.
I was gonna say it
Now go
seems like
ahead.
they're all related too, because it's like what, most of the presidents are all related to each other, and then there's like six corporations that disperse on like I don't know, like four corporations that disperse on media, and some of them are marrying each other and stuff. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, even your example of the automobile, Jamar. I mean, I remember you shared something with me that I didn't know about how the reason why streetcars was phased out of American cities was because the tire companies bought up all the streetcars and then phased them out, and thereby making the ownership of a car now a necessity. And it's a very calculated thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is a little, how do you overcome that? And I don't know. Do you all got a sense after this past election cycle that um, black people's position was like, you know what, we just gonna take a step back. Like, we're not going to push any movements. We're not going to be a part of any type of, don't lump us into BIPOC. Don't lump us into any type of initiatives to help you get gain, because every time we make a push and you capitalize off of our momentum, we just kind of get left behind. And so, we just going to step all the way back.
I think it's more of we are no longer leading any efforts, because we know that when we lead, things actually happen. But we're waiting for everyone else to step up for a change instead
Hmm.
of putting our bodies at the front of the four line. How about someone else do it for once? Because we are loud and proud about things that affect us, but no one else seems to be fighting as much for it. So, you know what? If half of your demographic wants to go and vote for someone who we all told you would not support you or help you, you deal with it.
Yeah, there is there's an energy of jadedness that I think we all can agree is happening here. And I mean, it's been what, 60 plus years? Actually, it's been more than that if we're thinking worldwide. But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the stats behind affirmative action, I think, was interesting in that fact where you remove affirmative action, and from my perspective, I felt like it was the Asian community that was making a huge
Mm-hmm.
push to remove it, and I say that because I remember at our time at UVA there was a discussion, and this was, whew,
20,
10 plus years ago,
yeah,
uh, where there was a discussion on an affirmative action, and so to our surprise, it was a lot of the Asian students saying in calling for the elimination because it was counterproductive, and they felt that it held them back. And so now here we are. Affirmative action has been eliminated, and when you look at some of the stats, the black enrollment has been steady, or even in some cases, like a UVA, has actually went up in numbers, whereas the Asian community has now, the enrollment has now dropped. And so you thought we were the problem. You thought it was us, and now because you attacked us,
Mm-hmm.
you got the removal of it, and now you're suffering. So now who's at fault?
Yeah, I think there was a
Can
miscalculation.
I ask, was it like all types of Asians from Asian America, or was it specific?
It was more specific, probably, because I remember that
Okay.
conversation when we were at UVA, and there was just one Asian dude that really was going in trying to say that black people were bringing down the overall GPA of the class, and black people, and I was like, and the SAT scores, I was like, SAT scores, we're about to graduate, and you're talking about SAT scores, like, what are you talking? I just remember
They
that.
get all the straight bullets.
Yeah,
Now
No.
my SAT scores was low. I ain't gonna lie.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
my
probably did bring it down. I mean, my Jones was low.
I mean, but at this point, like, you're about to graduate. It's. I think this was fourth year too, so this was our last year in college. And it's like, I don't give a damn about SAT scores. That was 4 years ago. Like, we got into college,
Yeah.
we're about to graduate, we're passing. Like, but I think further on with that question about the Asian students, I think they miscalculated on the what do you call that when your parents went to the school, legacy.
Oh, legacy.
Oh yeah.
So like when you eliminate DEI or what is it, affirmative action, you have more legacy people who are able to sort of apply and probably get in more than they would have before. So those numbers probably drop just based off of legacy alone. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
I think they also miscalculated their adjacency to whiteness.
True.
They need to look in the mirror a little bit more.
Yep.
Mm.
Because I was about to say, like, affirmative action wasn't just for Black people. Like, if these universities wanted to up their minority numbers, you're part of the minority, boo boo. Come on, get with it.
Yeah. And I was also thinking, like, it was just like at most of these schools, especially the top schools, black people make up what 4% of the like like you want the extra
No.
4%? Like that's crazy.
Like, and instead of fighting us, why aren't you fighting the majority percent that's there that you know didn't get there based off their knowledge or GPA or SAT score? Like,
So I'm actually curious now, speaking on like affirmative action and that elimination and DEI and that going away from like the federal funding. So what happens now with state colleges? How do they now get their funding? And will that mean there will be the reason why we are seeing this increase is because they need to have more funding to compete with some of these private schools. So now will they be reversing their look at legacy students and now actually maybe look at more legacy students to get more funding in some way, shape, or form?
They may lean into research. So like I know Michigan even before this DI thing, Michigan and one of the California schools, I can't remember Berkeley or one of them. They didn't do DEI. Or affirmative action. They stopped doing it a while ago.
Yeah, I think it was banned in California or something like that before the affirmative action.
Yeah,
ban.
but I think what they probably just lean more into like being a research school, getting their monies through that and like technology. So that's probably what they will do is just lean into more money, like business oriented, make it more of a business oriented school where they could make money off of their research and stuff like that.
didn't he pause funding for research? I don't know if it was specific type of research.
He paused a lot of funding for everything.
Yeah.
So who knows? Seriously, I think we're all the shock and awe of everything that happens. Like we literally don't know the ramifications of what he paused. Like I don't know. Like DC, half of DC is shut down right now, or about to get bought out. It's just very confusing.
Just for some military spending. That's what most of the money's going towards that.
Tell me about it. Like close some bases if you want. Actually, you know what? I'm all okay if he closes the board of education as long as my student loans get That file goes
Listen,
somewhere. Take that file away.
listen. If he
You get my
does
vote.
that,
I'm joking.
if he
Joking.
does that, he might be the goat. He might be the goat. I even had heard him saying that he's actually trying to take on the IRS and eliminate
Taxes.
the federal income tax. Listen, he might be the goat. I might, I, I might go and give me a little red cap.
But he's only gonna do it for him and his buddies. It won't. We'll still have to pay. The rest of us will have to pay.
Well, so I mean, but that's also sort of I guess, kind of the idea that I was getting at. Like, if we remove the emotion in the distraction of centering the conversation on race, and we focus on how do we position ourselves economically to benefit, um, is that not a win for us?
Him getting rid of the federal.
Well, I mean, just take the elimination of income tax, for example. Like, does that not be a win for the people in the black community being able to retain more of their dollars?
If
Mm,
he
I
did
don't
it
think
for
so.
everyone at every economic level, but they're not. It's only going to be for the one percenters. The rest of us will still pay taxes. And our taxes will no
Actually,
longer help fund the things that we need for infrastructure.
And it will increase prices of the things that we actually need, and so we're actually spending that money anyway.
and on top of that, if it's a blanketed like erasure of income tax, that means that we're not making any. I mean, like yes, we'll have a little bit more money to spend on our end, but so will the other groups
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
So it just like it basically raises the tide for
Yep.
everybody, and it doesn't really address any of the issues for the black community because we'll still be at the lower
Right.
half of that
Yeah, they'll just use it
equation.
as a reason to increase the cost of everything.
Yeah. You don't agree, Rob?
No, listen. You, I won't be getting a red cap, you guys.
Unless it's a student loans. Unless it's a student loans, then
Right.
That's the caveat. That's the caveat. That is the caveat. Um, but I think it was an interesting conversation. I'm not necessarily sure where the where do we go from here is, but I do think that, like, we are at this crux of, like, the movement and the push looks different now, and I think we have to move differently. We have to strategize differently. I think we have to think about the how do we frame the narrative differently, and um, I don't know what the future of that looks like.
So one thing before we wrap up, if we get rid of the idea of race, do you think then we start to think more about selfishly? I think we'll act differently. I think we'll start to move in a more selfish way if we get rid of the idea of like the concept or the construct of race.
What do you
I think
mean
that you start to
selfishly?
I think you start to move in a way that impacts you more than and you don't look at your neighbor and be like, hey, like you want to come up too? I think we become more selfish.
Well, that's
More,
assuming that right now we're looking at someone's skin color and judging based off that skin color they meet a certain economic bracket.
yeah, we probably just form a new communities. Like, so it wouldn't be
Mm,
based off of race. It would be based off economics or
true.
where you live. Like East Coast, West Coast was a thing. '90s, like it would always be something that we would sort of find a community.
Unite.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
I don't know
I
because I
would
feel
think that it becomes more united off of issues. Like, you can't afford your house, to buy a home. Neither can I. There's a like let's solve that issue. Or you can't afford to send or your children to a well-funded school because of the geographical location of where we are. Well, that's an issue that we can unite around. And so I think it becomes a collection of all of these economic disparities that then unite us across racial lines.
The only reason why I say about the selfishness though is because I feel like the U.S. is one of those countries where it's all about pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all that other jazz, right? Like it's about that. Everybody wants their own picket fence. So I think at the end of the day, it'll be survival of the fittest. And I think we'll still be in the same situation where we are now, where somebody is benefiting off of somebody else. And maybe it's a false sense of community, maybe it's an actual sense of community, but it just feels like the U.S. in general seems to have a more self-centered view towards personal gain and growth, whereas other countries seem to have a little bit more community-based effort when it comes to rising everybody else up.
Yeah, we might actually start to look more of like a country like India, which actually has a caste system that's based off of where you are economically. And so, I mean, to your point, there might be, because right now, as Black people, for example, there's different levels of education, economic achievement, and advancement. So we do a lot of not only horizontal collaboration, but also vertical collaboration too. And so, maybe sort of what I'm suggesting eliminates that vertical, you know, pulling the next man up kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll see. But, tomorrow will take care of itself. We can only worry about today. And with that, I just want to thank y'all for joining us for another episode of AutoBlack. We'll be back next week to solve the world's biggest problems at some point. And so we'll see y'all again soon. Peace.
Hey everybody! Thank you for listening to this episode of AutoBlack. If you have enjoyed the discussion, please hit that subscribe button or follow button, whatever you'd like. AutoBlack is a discussion-based podcast that is unapologetically Black at the intersection of design and culture. We acknowledge that our experiences are just that, our experience, but your voice is worth elevating and your perspective is valid. So please join the conversation and connect with us on Instagram at AutoBlack_podcast or email us your thoughts, comments, and even future topics you'd like us to discuss on the stoop at AutoBlackPodcast@gmail.com. AutoBlack out. Bye!